creative nothingness.
Hello, my name is Christopher Albright, and today with me is King Ruler himself, Wells Thompson. How are you doing today, Wells?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that.
Of course. And just so everyone knows, what are some credits that you have?
I'm chiefly a comic book writer. Probably at the moment best known for a book called Smut, which is what it sounds like, not safe for work, slice of life comedy about three women working through their very messy love lives. I also wrote a book called The Casket and the Rose, which is romance fantasy. And Frankenstein the Unconquered, which is this book, horror action book, very like Mad Max meets Universal Horror Monsters, that is coming out through in bookstores in February. Final order cutoff January 19th. So if you want to get your hands on that, go to your local shop and ask them for it. Yeah, I tend to bounce around genres, so it's not like I'm a horror writer. It's like I'm a writer, man. And then I've also do some comic book editing for some smaller indie writers who are just getting off the ground.
Sounds good. Today we are doing director's commentary on By Appointment Only. Again, this is going to be something for anyone who actually wants to delve into the writing process, understand why Wells Thompson has wrote what he's wrote in this book, and ask questions. These are going to be things that didn't make sense to us, or so on and so forth. This specific genre, what is the genre for By Appointment Only?
It is an urban fantasy, so magic, witches, supernatural stuff set in the modern day. I wrote it after, it was kind of a confluence of a couple of things, but a big part of it was I did a bunch of just out of pure obsession research, just this is really interesting, research into the witch trials and the witch hunts, the European witch hunts and the American witch trials, and how it was basically a cover into transitioning into capitalism and weeding out women in positions of social power. So the kinds of jobs that witch covers is things that are socially valuable but not monetarily valuable, and especially not in a patriarchal system. So all that is jargon to say I was very interested in what was going on, and I wanted to write a book about it. I wanted to write a couple books about it. I recently we're wrapping up production on a book called Echoes, a one-shot that we crowdfunded late last year. But this was the first book that I wrote about it, which kind of coincided with the other thing that was really heavily on my mind, which was I lost my best friend to cancer, and I really wanted to talk about that. I needed a way to kind of process that. And my therapist said, "Oh, you should write it in a journal." And I said, "That sounds dumb. What if I turn it into a comic and let everyone else deal with it for me?"
Okay. This is so that's crazy. I wasn't prepared for that, actually. This is how many issues of this is that you're planning?
So currently, we just released issue 1 last week. It went out in the mail. And we're planning on a 4-issue series, though the way things are looking, it might just go issue 1 and then into the trade. But either way, that's how long it's going to be. I think a little over 100 pages, 112, 116, something like that.
So just to cut you off real quick, but 4 issues, you mentioned the witch trials, you mentioned all that as inspiration. You also mentioned this sort of trauma, right, that we're actually working through. How much of that is actually in it? Is a lot of that okay, so the entire
100% like that. I mean, it wasn't this isn't like the Crucible where I'm pulling it straight out of history, but I wanted to capture the vibes of what would a witch look like in the modern day, and how would it what holes would it be trying to plug that we don't get a lot, that we don't adequately have covered in the system that we have. And it's a lot of everything from midwifery to herbalist to sex worker to there's a whole array of kind of professions that are sort of in the cracks of other better recognized professions that wind up being covered with what Alice does in the book.
I read through this book. And I said to myself, I have questions. I have concerns. I'm kind of curious what's happening here. You're explaining it now. And I'm going, oh my God, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my God, everything is clicking. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to open up the cover and discuss that. Is that
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let me open us up. Not me. Sorry. Here we go. Now, I do want to point out covers. I want to try and talk about those too, because I think, you should look at this cover on the shelf and instantly kind of feel what's happening. How much input did you have on the cover when you did it?
I mean, I have a lot of input just being the central point of production. So most covers I have a lot of say over, but I also put a lot of trust in the artist to make an image that's going to be really compelling. So in this case, as I recall, Maru Davalos gave 3 or 4 really good ideas for what the cover would be. And there were a couple that were maybe this would be good for issue 2. This just doesn't feel like it has the right vibe for issue 1. This one was mostly about wanting to kind of introduce the characters and give the vibe of friendly, storefronts plus magic. It was sort of, while also you get to see Alice, Scarlet, and Chester kind of front and center.
Chester's incredible. I can't wait to get to him. But okay, so I just wanted to see. I was curious how much people actually care about doing their covers as well. We're going to move forward, and for these next 2 pages. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and then there's 2 other covers, which are one of them is a Kiki's Delivery Service homage, which is something I wanted to do if we go further with the single issues, is an homage to a different popular witch series
brilliant.
that we took inspiration from and respect. So Kiki's Delivery Service was the first one, which was probably the most apt because the other thing that the book is kind of about is burnout and the feeling of just stretching yourself too thin, and that fits so neatly into it. So we got Cara McGee to do that cover, and then Jen St. Onge did a really beautiful kind of cozy home setting where they're just hanging out and playing with the cat, and it feels very intimate and you're being invited into their home. So I like the covers to tell different parts of the story and give different vibes depending on what it is. But yeah, this is the main one from the main artist. So
variant covers are awesome. There was one I saw. It's a real world version of the character, and you're oh, that's great. It's absolutely nothing to do with the story, but it's just a really cool image. I see a piece of it. What's going to happen next is I believe that the first 2 pages should really hit, right? It should really make the reader want to keep going. I'm going to give you a chance to read these first 2 pages out loud and kind of set the tone and let people know what's happening in that. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, let's move on. So you go ahead.
All right. So we start with a voice. Tell me about him, and a hand lighting the candle. He was a husky mix. I found him on the side of the road driving up from. What was he like? He was my best friend. He wanted to talk every second of the day, or walk every second of the day, got me out of the house. Hell, I met my fiance taking him to the park. He was stubborn, but he was a good boy. He always wanted to be told he was a good boy. He used to pout and yelp until I said it. Then he'd jump up. I'm sorry. No apologies. There's no judgment here. We leave judgment at the door.
First pages.
So I wanted to make sort of the focus of the book I wanted to make them the focus of the book. The plot is sort of secondary to me. The plot winds up being kind of a missing persons case, but that is really secondary to being with the characters and experiencing what they're experiencing and things that they're going through. And I wanted to start with an appointment, what Alice does in her day to day. And this particular instance is she is talking with someone who just lost his pet, his dog, and he's come to her to ask to bring him back if that's possible. And there's sort of a twist on that, but it sort of sets up the expectation of A, this is what her role in society is, and B, this is going to be important for the tone of the rest of the book. Not to spoil anything, but this winds up being an incredibly, like, what she does winds up having a lot of significance for what happens later, and like why we're honing in on this story in general. But I wanted to start. Most stories, I think you want to start with like a really clear, like, you know, establishing shot, location, like get people invested in where you are. And I have always really liked, not for every story, but for this one in particular, I wanted to do the opposite, where you're really close in, not on a place, but on an emotion, on a kind of feeling, on a situation that you don't know anything about on the outside, but as you pull back, you know, both like in perspective and in the dialogue, you start to gather more and more pieces. But right away, you understand this guy is in a lot of distress, and she's trying to help him through it.
No, this is also fantastic. I've sat with a lot of really good writers, people that I trust and believe in, and a lot of them say it's about the characters, right? You know, the setting is cool, the plot's great. It's about the characters. Daniel Warren Johnston, I watched his little speech on that before, and I was like, this is amazing. This all makes sense. We're gonna go ahead.
I think you can.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think you can 100% do it the other way. There are lots of.
Oh yeah.
There are lots of things. There are lots of stories that I really love that are not about the characters at all. But the way I write and the way I connect with my characters in my writing, it's always, not only is it about the characters, it's almost always about a relationship. Like there was a script that I spent a good 8 months just bashing my way through, trying to figure out what it was. And it was like halfway through the third edit that I was like, oh, it's about these two people and their relationship and their friendship. And from there, like the rest of the story started to work. Yeah. So the way I write, it's always about like, this is about a relationship.
And for anyone listening, if I say something, it's opinion, right? Don't listen to me. I'm mostly an idiot, so don't. It's fine. Let's go ahead. We're gonna move on to the next 2 pages. You're gonna let me know what's happening here.
Sure. So it's just kind of continuing from the last scene. We get a little bit more context for like what's going on and what he wants. If we haven't figured out from the box, it said Space Lord, and the like, it doesn't come up that he's a dog, but part of what I do when I write is like I want people to be able to intuit things that are obvious. And not like condescend and make people and not point it out in the dialogue where it feels unnatural to do so. Like the way you talk about your dog is not like, well, he was a dog and that was, it's like you talk about him like he's a dog.
Now one thing on this page though I think is fantastic is, can you bring him back? And her answer is no. It feels like that's a really important line for this.
It's a very important line for what the rest of the series winds up being and what the rest of the scene winds up being.
Exactly.
Is just like she sets expectations like immediately and is brutally honest when she needs to be.
So we know our boundaries for this part. Yeah. And then we get to see him actually get the dog back.
Yeah, she's able to bring him back for a limited amount of time, and it takes quite a bit of concentration, and we'll see the effects of that later. But essentially, she's like, I can give you closure. I can't give him back to you. I can't change what's been done, but I can give you closure and let you spend like the last moments with him the way you would want to spend your last moments with him, as opposed to how it actually happened.
Now she's setting rules in all of these panels. She's setting up kind of a boundary, sort of understanding. How important are these for the future?
I think they're important to keep in mind, but I also like to set rules that are then broken, that then like I can go back and break, or at the very least that I can subvert in some way. So yeah, what she says here is very important and does come up later, but it's mostly for like they're literal for this scene and then interpretive for later on down the line.
Which we move a little bit before we get to see him saying his goodbyes, and we again have her setting these notes. Anything else on this page?
Yeah, I just love how like this is both wish fulfillment and like extremely like cathartic. I think for anyone who's ever lost a pet is like, yeah, this is exactly what I would want. And that was sort of the goal of this opening, was like I didn't want to connect you like emotionally to the location, but I wanted to make you like resonate immediately with what the vibe of the story was going to be, if that makes sense. So there are different ways to hook people in. I didn't like start with a really interesting plot development. I just started with like, this is going to be an emotionally cathartic journey that you're going to be on. And it's also going to be kind of brutally sad.
No, for me, when I read this, it was page 4 where I was like, okay, now I'm more hooked. Page 2, I was like, I get the kind of idea. And then we're going to move forward again. We're going to go into after the goodbye. This page, right? This is sad. This is again.
Yeah, because sad. I mean, it's like it doesn't matter if it was an ideal setting, you still lost someone like important to you, and she's kind of like she's done this so many times that she knows how to read the situation, knows how to read the person, and could just tell him his emotions, like how he's expressing, like without him having to express it. Like, I know how you feel. In no uncertain terms, I know how you feel. I'm telling you like what you're feeling, and you're not disagreeing with me. But then like also reassuring, like, yeah, it was real. That was really him. Or you know, how interpretive you want that to be. But like, I'm not taking that away from you. But I like this is a moment of like, yeah, it's over.
Which the expression on his face. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's what she says. Like, we all have to say goodbye eventually.
Yes.
But yeah,
the expression on his face. We move forward. I saw it again. I said, okay, so he's happy, right? It was cathartic.
Yeah.
It all played out. It worked perfectly for him.
In a way, yeah. It's like this is as best as he could have hoped for in a lot of obviously you probably going into that you probably wanted something more, but with everything laid out so clearly of like you're not getting him back at the end of this. But here's what we can do. It's like, this is as good as it was ever going to be.
But there's a few other issues that we have on the page.
Sure. Well, we set up something that is more of a character beat and an answer to a question that may come up later, which is, why do we need Scarlet here? So how can I repay you? Suggested donations are listed on the website. Immediately, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, why does a witch have a website?
It was weird for me, and I had a lot of questions, but I was like, maybe I'll just let that one slide. Tell me more.
So, part of the reason why the Alice needs Scarlet is because she has an absolute disdain for modern technology and a lot of the way that society is run, which we see later in the issue. She has this big rant about phones, which I somewhat believe, but like that is like a roided out version of what I believe about phones. But like she wants to, on the one hand, she has a disdain for that, but needs to run like a practical business or she can't afford to feed herself. And on the other hand, she wants to help everyone. And as we'll see in the next couple of pages, that is a problem because it hurts her. It is like physically painful to do magic and to do really intensive magic over long periods of time, which is an important rule that I wanted to set up. Is like the magic is not without a cost. She is like harming herself by doing these feats. And so Scarlet is there for both reasons, both to help her like manage her time and schedule so that she's not burning herself out, and to just like be the practical person that sets up the websites, you know, manages her appointments and keeps her on track in the modern world.
And here we have Scarlet, like you said, she's already discussing the appointments on this page.
Yeah, she's very on top of it. Type A kind of personality of like, I've got everything down. You just say the word, I can shut everything down. I can move it to the next day, whatever. And Alice pushes through because that's just who she is. She has labeled the jar where the kind of mass that she hacks up is in order to we find out later why she does that, but just keep in the back of your mind that like she's aware of the physical toll that this kind of performance does to Alice. And she has some feelings about it. Yeah, she's an assistant, but she does have her own like agenda and reason for being here and doing what she's doing.
So this page just kind of give us Alice, kind of let us know what's happening.
Introduces us to Scarlet, sets up the sort of physical ramifications of doing magic. Caps off with a nice little Sandman homage, I guess. Just that peachy keen at the end.
Which, when we move forward, I don't know if this was intentional by you or not, but for me, after seeing someone cough up blood, the next page is moving on to even more. And
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why stop?
Yeah, well, it's immediately like concerning. Like you're worried for her, but we learn, you know, kind of just through meeting Alice that she's not the kind of person that can easily like back out of what she feels like is a responsibility to her. Like
And
she's the town witch and she takes that seriously, even though it's doing a lot of damage to her, which there are reasons for that are like spoilers for later in the miniseries. You learn more about her situation, why this affects her so much, because like if magic was this awful, then like magic would be very sparse, and she wouldn't be doing it all the time, or like this wouldn't be a regular thing for a lot of people.
And I'm going to move forward real quick because you can clearly see
the
its
effect
toll on number 2.
Yeah, and these 2 pages are kind of about covering the both seeing that she does a lot in a day and also covering kind of the breadth of what she does, everything from like making vegetables and solving relationship problems and doing sewing circles and like community organizing and stuff like that.
This is the kind of page where I would be putting in friends problems or things like that. Are there any kind of issues here that you wrote in for other people, or are these just strictly for the story?
No, these none of these come back, but they were sort of meant to typify like roles that a witch might play in back then, and you know might be brought in to fill in a modern context. So helping a woman through pain that a doctor can't or won't like solve, helping with relationship issues, essentially couples counseling, herbalists, modern ailments. There's a bit about like plant this and tell your husband to water it, and if it bears fruit by the end of the year, then you're ready to have a child. And that's like, you can see that as that could be a magical thing, or you could just see it as if he's not taking care of it, then he's probably not ready to take care of a child. And like there was in the first draft a line about like, how does that work? It's like you're asking the wrong questions, where it's like it doesn't matter if everything that she does is magic. It works on its own merit.
I love that line. I'm sad that line got taken out because that was one of my favorite parts. I saw it, like I understood it, but it was also this is great. You mentioned writing smut before. Let's ask what's happening on this page. Why it's happening on this page.
Truly, it wasn't like if I wanted to be lewd about it, I could have been a lot. It was more of just like I wanted her to be in a vulnerable spot, and there's not a lot of nudity in the comic, but there are moments of censored nudity in this first issue, and I wanted to set it up here as like contrast for what happens later. This is very like, I am relaxing, I am in my home, this is just what I do when no one else is around. And then later we see it in a context of like, I am in serious danger. And I wanted to kind of set up a contrast for that, and also have fun introducing Chester, who is the best character that has ever been written.
Best character. Oh my gosh. Go ahead, tell us about Chester.
Chester's an orange cat, and he talks, and he acts the way a normal cat would act if it could talk, which is he's an idiot and he says what's on his mind, which is very little. I rescue cats, so I have a love and affinity for cats, and orange cats in particular just have this thing where they are very dumb and precious, and I love them, but God, they have nothing going on in their heads. And so, yeah, I love the idea of like, we're so used to in media with witches, usually it's a black cat, and usually it talks in a pretty elegant, erudite way, where it's like the wise, sage kind of character that gives, advice to our protagonist. And I wanted to contrast that with a character that is truer to life in an unexpected way, of just like, this isn't a person or like a magically enhanced cat. This is Alice's cat that she gave the ability to talk, and it uses that to say, I love you and I threw up in your bed.
He's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna move on. Again, you're talking about relaxing, being vulnerable. I believe that these kind of share
just kind of showing us a little bit more of what she can do and how she uses it. And like, as much as we've seen her do magic and it clearly takes a toll on her. She also doesn't have a problem just doing it for herself. And there are like various limits of like how much concentration things take and what she's willing to do. And that this page sort of subtly sets that up, but it's a little bit more about just like, I wanted to express her personality a little bit more. And if you have someone who is unabashedly like highly feminine and magical, and like, why not express it through like high fashion? So she burns through a couple of dresses and something that Emma Frost might wear, and then she's like, okay, fuck it, it's sweatpants, which is highly relatable to literally everyone I know that cares about clothes. Is like, yeah, sometimes you just throw on the grossest thing and it's a sweatpants day.
Which again, while being sweatpants, while trying to relax, we get to see more of the relationship here.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the most important parts is at the very end when she's trying to talk to her about what's going on here.
Yeah, again, so much of this is like, there's clearly a something going on between Alice and Scarlet. This is just very much like Alice is venting and we kind of fall into a familiar place, and then before Scarlet even starts talking about it, Alice is like, we're not having this conversation again, we're not doing it. And part of that is, again, kind of my own personal preference for dialogue that is realistic over convenient. But also it's informing the relationship so that you can see how close they are, how long they've been together, that they can have an entire argument without saying anything. And it is keeping crucial information from the audience because it will be relevant later. It's setting up a mystery of something is wrong and we don't know exactly what.
Which we're going to move into the somewhat argument itself. Anything to say about this page for you?
Sure. Well, I mean, so we get bits and pieces. Obviously, Scarlet is like very concerned about how hard Alice is pushing herself. We're concerned about how hard Alice is pushing herself. So we kind of sympathize with Scarlet in this scene. But we get a little bit more in terms of her motivation of seeing like, how do you expect me not to feel responsible? And that's meant to kind of put a question in your mind of like, why would she feel responsible? Before we get an answer, of course, Chester very much interrupts.
No, he didn't interrupt. He's doing fine.
He's expressing. He's expressing himself.
He's
I just love that. Great. Now you've upset the boy. It just read very like authentic, love and friendship to me. And before on the next page, before Scarlet can kind of get to the meat of the matter, Alice cuts her off, and we get kind of the important part of why this isn't resolved, which is Alice doesn't want it to be resolved. She says, I can't do it without you. And we can see that Scarlet doesn't really accept it, but is willing to for her sake. And that tension will be very important going forward.
Yes, this is one of those pages you read, and then as soon as you read that line, you go, oh, okay, like here, like this is all the pieces coming together. I'm starting to understand what the actual story is going to be.
Yeah.
And everything gets interrupted.
Yeah, this is, and then kind of the plot crashes in. So, plot versus story. Plot is like, there is a zombie apocalypse. Story is Joel and Ellie are fixing themselves and are not fixing themselves, but bonding. And then when they crash together is when is usually at the beginning and at the end. To use The Last of Us as an example, I wasn't just pulling names out of nowhere. So yeah, the story here is very much Alice and Scarlet have a problem, and then the plot is Jamie is missing her boyfriend, and Jamie gets introduced into this plot very suddenly. It's sort of a play on the whole by appointment only thing, because that's meant to be like a strict rule, but Alice is not good at keeping those boundaries, and she has a hard time earlier, there was a line about you have tomorrow off to recharge, but we will see in the next issue they spend all day tomorrow, or they spend the rest of today and all day tomorrow dealing with Jamie's problem.
See, this is exactly why I wanted to do this kind of thing, because it's so much fun to talk to writers and they go, oh, it's by appointment. Oh, that's sure, it's clear as day. It's easy to understand. I'm not the best reader, and I get excited when someone spoon feeds me.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Sure. But yeah, that like Jamie comes in, they're clearly a nervous wreck. And they, you know, try to say like, okay, there are proper channels to do this, and they just say the right thing to make Alice on the next page just be like, okay, fine. What like I can't like this whole the first 3 panels are just like, again, that argument that has no words. It's like, clearly Alice has a point of view, clearly Scarlet has a point of view, and Scarlet just has to deal with what Alice wants because Alice is her boss and Alice is the witch in the situation. It's ultimately Alice's choice.
Which again, oh, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
No. That's pretty much all I had to say.
And again, we're gonna have to pause the entire story because our adorable cat hero, who's the main character, has decided to say something here.
I mean, this page, part of it was just like, I'm guilty of this all the time, is I will name a character and then like their name will come up and then you'll never hear it again. You just have to mentally remember who they are. So whenever I have an opportunity to reestablish names, it's always good to take that just so it sticks in people's minds. And so having this thing,
I love that.
Yeah. So having this thing where like you bring a character up and you introduce them to everyone. Like, we know who Scarlet, Alice, and Chester are, but they don't always refer to each other by their names all the time. So this is another chance to like cement that for the reader, is like, these are who these people are. This is their relationship.
Now, go ahead.
Without being like super over the top about it, and like it feels very organic to the story.
Now, this page mostly introduces Chester, from what I can tell.
It shows Chester as a sort of notable force in the house. It's also a moment of like, it gives us an outside perspective, because obviously we're being brought into this. We don't know 100% how common magic is outside of this. Jamie is a newcomer to all of this. So they come into the scene not having ever experienced magic before. So when they meet a talking cat, it's weird. And from that, we can glean that like, oh, this would be unusual, actually. We're just privy to inside information.
Absolutely. I was speaking with another writer. They told me that a lot of what you have to do when you're writing a script is to cut out anything that isn't necessary, and try to cut it down to really the meat and potatoes of what's important. And I was talking to a different writer who said the fuzz, the weird pieces in a script are what people remember. You know, it's those things that we can leave with. And reading this, I'm like, this feels like fuzz. I understand it's reintroducing. I understand it's doing a few things, but it feels like fuzz. But it was the most memorable piece for me, was the cat saying, "They neglect me," and I'm like, "No, I love you. You're the best cat in the world."
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where I was like, you have to decide.
Think if you strip a script down to its bare essentials, what you wind up with is something very mechanical and something that is a lot of the time very forgettable. But I do think that like everything should serve a purpose. And I try to make every scene do 2 things. Like, if I'm including something that is for fun, that is a joke, I also want it to be reinforcing a character trait or introducing something interesting about the world in like a novel way. And it's those things that are like, that come in and don't do anything else other than be cute, that you can usually wind up cutting. But also like, only that's sort of the kill your darlings thing, is like, if this isn't really doing anything else other than being cute, we don't need it here. But I do think we need this here, both because this is all said and done, as cutesy as the aesthetic is, a lot of that is because the subject matter is pretty heavy, and I wanted there to be moments of levity, and I wanted there to be moments of like relief from that. That comes in the art style, that comes in at the writing, because what we're dealing with at the core of it is like loss and heartbreak, and I wanted that to be accessible. So you can make a script and a comic that's just an endless slog of misery, but I don't think people generally enjoy them very much. Unless it's like a series of unfortunate events where it's so over the top that it's funny. Like that's kind of where you have to go with it in order to make it work.
Speaking of the slog, speaking of everything, we're going to go back to boundaries, because again, she cannot stop herself.
Truly. She loves a quick change. And part of this is like explaining the sort of discrepancy in the way that she looks in private and in public. Mm-hmm. So she gets the long hair, she gets the witch dress, she changes her eyes to look violet, but that's partly like a strategic move so that people buy into the magic and don't spend every moment like questioning, you know, what she is and what she's doing. It's like, if you can just head that off at the pass, we're going to have a lot easier of a time. That's a little bit of an ancillary detail, but I like it as, like, again, a character revealing thing, and they've been doing this for a while and they know the ropes.
We're going to move forward again. Anything on this page? I didn't actually pick anything up when I was going through it.
Well, it sets up a couple of things for future issues. So the Fae and the rules of Fae folk wind up being important for a reason you probably don't expect.
Okay. None of that happens for me, so it's now starting to.
There's a couple of, again, this is 1/4 of a story, so we do have to take the time to like set up rules that will come up later, and I prefer to set up rules in a way where it's like, hey, remember this thing from earlier that didn't seem to matter but now does, as opposed to being like, oh, we're dealing with the Fae, here's what you need to know. You know, it helps to make the reader feel clever and not like they're being condescended to if it feels like they're putting pieces together as opposed to being told explicitly what is going to happen or what they need to be remembering. But like, we can see a couple of things, like the Fae come up and Alice is visibly very like not frightened but like startled by this and is like, oh no, is this a big problem? And is relieved when it's not that. So we can kind of get a sense of like, okay, something went down that will wind up being relevant later. And we also get like little snippets that are there both as sort of small comic moments, but also again reinforcing that relationship of like, let's get to what couldn't wait until tomorrow, next Thursday. Because of course, Scarlet knows her schedule better than Alice does. Yep. And then you get this moment of like, Alice has a button for really shitty men. So like, as soon as a boyfriend comes up, she's like, I'm not going to kill him. Okay, it's always the boyfriend. I get it. I'm not going to kill him. That's not what I do. And part of that is like, again, reinforcing, because it is a book about a witch that has in my opinion, an inescapable intersection with like patriarchy as a concept. And so this is a way of exploring that, but it's also a way of sort of setting up an important relationship that will come up later for Alice. A lot of what's going on in this scene is setting up Jamie's conflict, setting up things about Alice that we don't already know, and giving us, you know, we know what a typical appointment for Alice looks like, so we're seeing the ways in which this is not typical.
Which, as we move forward, this tells a little bit more about what happened to the boyfriend on this scene.
Sure. It's like
husband, is that right?
It's boyfriend. Yeah, Jamie believes that they're missing. Their apartment was destroyed. They get kind of flustered in a way that could be important if you know how to read into it, but we can just interpret that as them kind of stammering and stuttering. And we get this like one of many, I think, in the second to last panel, important knowing looks from Alice to Scarlet. So you can kind of entertain yourself in the rest of the series by looking at all the times that Alice and Scarlet are talking to each other without talking to each other.
It's a great drinking game, yeah.
Yeah, and like, what could they be saying? And I wanted to make it fairly obvious, but also, again, that thing of like, we want to reinforce how close they are and what their relationship is. Yeah. And you can just see in any given panel, like, how much they know each other, how much they trust each other just through being around each other all the time. Yeah, so we get kind of the crux of the problem. Jamie comes to them with, I'm scared, my boyfriend is missing, I don't know what to do.
Everything's laid out. We understand kind of the next plot that's going to happen. We understand the characters that we've dealt with. We understand the universe that we're in now. I believe here is just a small thing of simply she needs something to be able to find.
Yeah,
is that right?
There's always an artifact. There's always a weird doohickey. In this case, crystal ball. She needs a crystal ball, and then she needs something to connect to Lucas with. Jamie has Lucas's phone. We trigger a very long rant.
Here. Tell us about this rant. Tell us why you even why.
Well, I love fudging with like the physical properties of a comic. So one of not this isn't a direct reference to this, but the most similar thing I can think of is like two of them. So Scott McCloud in his book either Making Comics or Understanding Comics does a similar thing where he fits a like 2 or 3 like a very long paragraph of text into a single panel. And as you're reading, if you bother to read all of it, you understand that the point of the panel is, or of the speech is like, no one's going to pay attention to this. Like, because you put so many words in this little space, no one's going to pay attention to this. And then the other one that comes to mind is like, what is it? The Unbelievable Gwynpool, where she's having like a major anxiety attack, and the caption box like crowds her out and pushes her through a window because it's so massive and she's overthinking things. And I wanted to kind of play with it. I didn't want I laid out a couple of different options for like how to do it for the artist and letterer, and what we wound up going with I think works really well. But it's just like this massive wall of text, and if you sit there and read it, you can understand the points that Alice is making, but you can also like barely skim it and then see that some of the text is hidden behind her hat. A lot of it gets obscured by this like, hey, this interjection from Scarlet. And we can immediately tell that, one, this is a rant that she has said a million times before, and it doesn't really matter, but it matters that she's opinionated. It matters that she has these like strong feelings about technology and the modern world and what it's doing to us, and how separate she feels that she is from these things that we like live with every day.
Yeah.
And also her tendency to lose focus is quite important.
Bad with boundaries, bad with focus, just wants to hang out. I don't know if she should be a witch. She should just find a different job.
She's great at being a witch. She just needs someone there, like Scarlet, to be like, hey, focus up.
Focus her.
We got to get to the next appointment. We got to do the next thing.
Now, again, we're going to go back to the other part of smut, and
yeah, well, like I said, there's going back to like nudity, saying something other than this is there to titillate the audience, which is a big bugaboo of mine, even in smut. That I like. Part of the reason why I made smut is like nudity and sexuality are really interesting and really telling of what a character does. And most of the time, even in books that aren't like smut, that aren't erotica, nudity is used for exactly one purpose, and that's for the enjoyment of the audience, like purely. You know, one of the, to bring up another book of mine, like Frankenstein the Unconquered, opens with a naked Frankenstein stabbing a meteor descending from the sky and emerging like this. And he spends the first like half of the first issue completely naked, but it doesn't read as like this is fan service. It reads as like this is nudity as power. He's unashamed. He moves through the scene unencumbered, and when he totally wrecks some people, it's in his most primal state.
Now this is the exact opposite, though.
This is nudity as vulnerability, as like something is immediately wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And so we immediately see like this isn't right. She acknowledges that this isn't right. We can see visually that it's wrong, and then things start to go very, very wrong very, very quickly. Something attacks her and attempts to possess her on the next page, and that sets us up for a cliffhanger into the next issue with the very seemingly important note of Jamie saying, "Please, not again," as though this has happened before.
As soon as I read that, I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, why did you you've ruined everything? Why did you come here? You know, you're an awful person, Jamie."
Yeah, it's and that is certainly going to be Scarlet's opinion about it in the next issue. Is like
I agree with Scarlet fully throughout the entire script.
Scarlet has a very specific point of view, and we learn a lot more about her as the series goes on. But yeah, no, obviously we end at a very like startling exciting points. And while this book isn't the most action heavy or the most like plot heavy kind of book, I do like to include those moments where it's going to be very intense. You need those peaks and valleys. You need things to really pop off for people to pay attention and care. And so ending that on that big moment is like, oh, I have to see what happens next.
So again, this is 4 issues that we're doing. I got to learn a ton about this. Looking back on everything that we just read, looking back on everything we did, is there anything that you feel like you might have wanted to do differently? I know it's kind of fresh, but anything that changed in your mind?
I mean, I as a practice, I try not to think about like all the things that I wish I had done differently, because I will simply go crazy if I do that. Because the answer is everything, like it to a certain extent, and that's usually right after, like right when it comes out. It's sort of, so in process, I'm questioning everything. It comes out and I'm just so happy it exists. And then there's a little bit of time after that I'm like, oh, all these problems, and this could have been different, this could have been different. There's always a typo somewhere.
Always.
But what I will say is most of the time, I go back and I read Mechaton, which is our first ongoing series, or early Frankenstein the Unconquered, or the first issue of Smut, the first Cat Skin and the Rose. And I wind up being really happy with how they turned out. Which is a privileged position to be in for a lot of creatives. Most people hate their work after a little bit of time, but I tend to come back and find that I really like it. So I try not to, I want to pay attention to what's working and what's not, because I will very often like change if issue 1 comes out, I will very often change something about issue 4 before we get around to it, based on based on what wound up working really well in issue 1. Frankenstein the Unconquered, issue 1 starts with our main character basically traumatizing a child That's
fine. I stand with that too. It's cool.
It's Frankenstein, all right? There's going to be some child trauma. But like, after, it was such a striking scene, and the way it was drawn and the way that scene played out, it occurred to us only after, like, and we had written the whole thing in advance, but it occurred to us only after the first issue was like done and in print and drawn, that like, oh, that kid needs to come back. He has something to say. He has a journey. So yeah, that happens all the time. And I try as hard as I can to like keep an eye out for those moments and what's working, but I try not to concern myself with like, how would I have done this differently? It's like, there's a million things I would have done differently.
Of course.
And there's a million things that I never would have known, like going into this ahead of time. But like, you know, we deal with what we have in front of us, not what we would like in the aftermath. You know, you go to war with the army you have.
This sounds like fantastic advice for every writer, me included. I was listening to it going, yeah, no, that makes sense. Just go with it. All right, Mr. Wells Thompson, where can people find you?
For social media, I'm most active on Blue Sky. It's my name, Wells Thomp. So Wells Thomp minus the last 3 letters. And then I have a newsletter on Substack called Comics, Cats, and Cocktails, where we talk about all those things. It's a good place to keep up with what I'm doing, and I do one monthly, like, large one, and then a couple of smaller fill-ins that'll be like a review for a movie or a book that I liked, and you know, something like that, as well as announcements for projects that are coming out. And then I have a website, wellsthompson.com, where you can check out my stuff and potentially buy something if you really like it. Most of the year long, I have a Kickstarter going. Currently, in this moment, I don't. This is my rest period that I give myself every January, like end of December, January, and beginning of February. I have to just write and be a person, and then the rest of it is grind it out.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you being on. I hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again. Yeah, this is really fun.
Good.
Bait for the bait throw. Trash for the trash throw. Welcome to my emotional thunderdome. I am creative, nothing